Here's chapter 8 of Spirit School continued. I hope it doesn't overlap. It's a bit confusing. He woke with a shout, covered in sweat and shaking. Lucy had her hand on his shoulder, shaking and comforting him. "It's okay," she said. "You're safe now." Tom turned to her. He was still half asleep. He was still seeing the witch in his mind. He squinted and her face changed back to Lucy's. She was mopping the sweat from his brow and looking concerned. "I heard your scream," she said. "What was it about?" He told her all of the gory details. It was so realistic, he said. I could see the anger in her eyes. "Oh, not her again," Lucy replied with a groan. "Yes," said Tom. "I don't know what we've done to deserve it." "She must be really angry about something." "Well, she didn't exactly have a great life," Tom replied with a shrug. "We should look more into her life and the real cause of her death," said Lucy. "I'm sure that we could get to the bottom of things." "You're probably right," said Tom, "but first we have a lesson to get to." Today was English literature, a subject Tom found interesting, being a secret budding poet. The teacher, Mr. Swift, was a miserable-looking man until he spoke, and then his face and his whole demeanour lit up. His eyes sparkled and his mouth moved into a kind of a smile. He was enthusiastic and he did a quick-fire test on the knowledge of literature and then proceeded to read Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. He read carefully and with great passion, intoning every word and syllable so the poem sprang into life in the air. Even the most bored-looking pupils became spellbound. The poem unfolded with such drama that one could imagine the raven swooping down onto the teacher's desk and popping out one of his eyeballs and flying out of the window with its bounty. By the final verse, his eyes were on fire and he bellowed the last verse out. This made some of the pupils jump in surprise and fear. Spittle ran from his lips as he got to the end. It was as if he expected a round of applause, and in a way he did. Then he asked the pupils to write their own version. All of the class was suitably inspired, and they got their heads down to begin. Tom was flying away with his pen, enjoying the experience. The lesson passed quickly, and then the bell rang, and Mr. Swift gave out copies of Edgar Allan Poe's work for them to read. Tom and Lucy went to the canteen for lunch. Tom, as usual, was half asleep, but his head was still buzzing from the lesson. Over coffee, he excitedly told Lucy about the lesson, and she listened with interest and offered to read a few poems with him that night. They were joined by James and Anna, who also had enjoyed the lesson. James bragged as usual about the story he was going to write. Anna listened with a smile, and she was used to his grandiose ideas falling flat. Tom sat there drinking his coffee and daydreaming, as he was apt to do. He imagined the raven leading him down to the woods at midnight and taking him to the cottage to be met once again by the cackle and mad eyes of the librarian, as the raven sat on her shoulder like an angry, ragged parrot with a glint in its eyes. Lucy nudged him out of his reverie. "Where have you been?" she said with a laugh. Tom laughed. "I need to wake up," he said sheepishly. "You're a dreamer," said Lucy. "If you're not careful, you'll dream your life away." "True," he said with a smile. James jumped into the conversation. He didn't like to feel left out. "Hey," he said, "I really loved that poem, The Raven. It was awesome." "I'd love a bird like that, swooping down and scaring everyone," he said. "I wouldn't like that thing messing up my hair and clawing at me," Anna replied. James laughed and said, "Is that all you care about, your appearance?" She gave him a frosty look and he just smiled. "Sorry," he said, "I've got carried away." "Yeah, you should be on a stretcher," she replied sarcastically, and they all laughed. James went a little red, but he could take a joke. "Just you wait till you read my poem," he said indignantly. "Come on," Lucy said, "I'm off to the library. Anyone want to come? We've got stories to write." They eventually followed her. The library was one of the few places to get peace and quiet. It was hard to concentrate with noise everywhere, unless, of course, the librarian made an appearance. They all sat together scribbling. Tom and James worked on their poems, and Anna and Lucy wrote short stories. Tom and James were in a kind of competition to see who could write the most heroic and dazzling poem. Tom found a rhyming dictionary and flicked through it. He wrote a list of all the obvious rhymes. See if you can find a rhyme for orange, said James with a smile. It was rare for them to be so enthusiastic about homework, but it was good fun. Tom read the beginning of his poem, which was basically a list of unconnected rhymes with a few words in between. Everyone roared with laughter, and they decided to have a break and play tennis. Boys versus girls. At first, they practiced for fun, and then things got more serious. Tom was hitting the ball a little too enthusiastically. The girls were quite fragile and gave as good as they got. James was covered in sweat and not looking too happy, as he only played for fun. Before they knew what was happening, the girls were winning, and 2 sets to 0. Right then, said James cockily, let's put some effort into this. Unfortunately, he and Tom were both dog-tired and had worn each other out, showing off in the first set. This is too easy, shouted Anne with a giggle. She spread the ball into each and every corner with ease. At the end of the game, everyone lay in the grass exhausted. Tom and James were covered in sweat, but the girls looked annoyingly relaxed. I need a bed to lay on, said Tom. Me too, said James, trying to make light of the situation. They were exhausted. They all walked back to the school and to their dormitories, feeling tired but fit.